Welcome back, everyone, to another reaction video. I actually just got home from Washington, D.C. about a half hour ago. It was an awesome trip, had a great time with friends, got to experience some things that in my couple of dozen trips to D.C. I've never gotten to experience before, so that was awesome. We'll do a live stream this weekend talking all about it, but for now, it's time to dive back into the reactions. And my friend, Mr. Betts, from out east, who is still teaching, and I can imagine has an amazing history class, has a new video out on his channel, Drawn of History. It's called The Craziest Revolutionary War Hero You Don't Know. And a bunch of you have been asking me to take a look at it, so that's what we're going to do today. The link is down in the description, so you can check it out without my commentary, as well as check out all of his other videos, including a couple of videos in which I am one of the voice actors. So he's got 73,500 subscribers. I would love to see us help push him a little closer to that magic number of 100,000 so he can get that 100,000 subscriber silver play button that I've got somewhere packed in all my stuff that I haven't unpacked yet. But let's go ahead and dive into this one. Before we do that, I want to say thank you to Ross in Risca in southern Wales, who is one of our latest to sign up as a patron on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to learn how you can support this channel, and it really does make a big difference, the link is in the description of every single video, as well as on the screen here in about 5 seconds. Check it out.
This video is brought to you by you guys, namely my patrons on Patreon and channel members here on YouTube. Check the links in the description, and now on with the video. Heroes of the American Revolution. Everybody's got their favorite. Perhaps yours is George Washington for his leadership, an unconventional Christmas present to the Hessians. Ooh, one more present. I am hoping it is an Apfelkuchen. Nein, it is not. Or maybe the Marquis de Lafayette, the French teen noble that snuck into America to fight for liberty. Someone should really make a video about him.
Yeah, we haven't checked that one out yet, and we should. Lafayette's such an amazing story. There were a lot of minor nobility and even some higher nobility from Europe that came over with introduction letters, a lot of them from places like Germany and France, wanting to get involved because there was no great conflict for them to get involved in Europe, and they wanted to kind of get their experience, right? And Lafayette's one of those guys, and he's just a teenager when he comes over. He's like 19, 20 years old. And most of these guys they get honorary major general ranks and things like that, but they never see service. Lafayette not only sees service, but is vital to the Revolutionary War effort and becomes one of Washington's most trusted generals, and then goes back to France and becomes an important part of the French Republic when it develops. And so, fascinating, amazing story.
Maybe two? Jeez, this video's just started, then you're already plugging others? Shut up. Or who could forget the swamp fox Francis Marion, who terrorized the British with his guerrilla tactics?
And Francis Marion is the character on whom Mel Gibson's character in The Patriot is very loosely based. But he was a huge hero, especially to the southern and kind of central states. A lot of the people who end up settling Kentucky after the war, for example, come from places like North Carolina and the mountains of Virginia, and they, of course, are very tightly connected to the Francis Marion story. And so a lot of families, in fact, most families are going to end up with a son named Francis Marion and then the last name at some point.
Please? Fine, I'll check. But I'm telling you, soldier, the swamp fox is not under your rack. See? But perhaps the coolest, most badass hero of the American Revolution never wore a uniform, never fought a battle, and never even peed standing up. Enter Nancy Morgan Hart.
Can't say I'm real familiar with her story. Should be interesting.
Before we talk about Nancy, we must talk about the colony of Georgia, which was pretty unique. For example...
And you notice the shape doesn't look anything like what we think of as modern Georgia. And what's the boundary here? It's the Appalachian Mountains, which was the western boundary of these colonies at this time.
Well, it was the last colony to be founded, and by a lot. Like half a century after number 12 Pennsylvania. That's like turning 50 and finding out your parents are having another child. Ew, how is...
That's not all that unusual. My grandma's parents were 48 and 46 when they had her. So it does happen.
Is that even possible? And why are you guys still doing it? Well, the why of the Georgia colony can be answered by one man, James Oglethorpe. King George II, I'm sure you can see the debtors' prisons are simply overflowing. I know. I find it amusing when they all reach out their arms for scraps of food. Makes the place look like a centipede. Yes, well, I believe in the goodness and potential of all people. And I have a vision of a utopia in which those poor souls can start new productive lives in the new world.
And one of the reasons why the UK is having such trouble with these prisons is the sentences were just crazy. Did some research in my own family history, and I had a great uncle named Enoch Betts who was sentenced for stealing a tablecloth. A tablecloth. Now, I understand that this was not like some $2 plastic tablecloth. It was probably made of some very fine material and had some value to it. But the man stole a tablecloth and got 7 years in a prison hulk, which was a ship that they basically took all the ship stuff off the top and just had the hull of the ship, and they turned it into a prison. They used them a lot during the Revolution. 7 years for stealing a tablecloth. So that's why you're dealing with this overcrowding of prisons.
Oh, you're done? Oh, sorry, I was just thoroughly uninterested in every word you said. It would help England's commercial interests. We could even grow silk. Wormy butt string? Still not interested.
We'll name it after you.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a buffer between the Carolinas and Spanish Florida? A cadre of expendable poor people would be useful, but... And of course...
I think it's gonna come... I haven't seen this yet, but it's gonna come down to, we'll name it Georgia after you, King George.
We'd name it Georgia after you. And there it is. Charters approved. All right, you miserable angels. Everyone has their portion of land and thus new life ahead of them. I'm just going to dash home to England for more supplies. Please do mind the few rules I've established, and I'll be back in 2 sheets
No land grabs, no slavery, no rum. Guarantee none of those things ended up happening that way.
Sometime later.
I'm back, my special snowflakes, and Wait, why are there land barons? And slaves? And rum!
Hey, congratulations to him for not putting a monocle on the guy who's dressed like the Monopoly guy, because the Monopoly guy doesn't have a monocle. That's one of those weird things we think happened.
Has anyone seen Tampa Bay? Screw those deadbeats, Georgie.
Why? I was going to read this earlier. Why should Elizabeth I and Charles II be the only monarchs with colonies named after them? So Elizabeth I has Virginia, and Charles II had the Carolinas.
The colony's all yours. Georgia officially became a royal colony in 1752, and decades later, when the American Revolution began, wanted to stay loyal to the king.
Yeah.
Still, some Georgians felt it was time to form their own country. Georgians like Nancy Morgan Hart.
So yeah, I mean, the real power base of strong loyalist sentiment is probably strongest in the South, in the Carolinas, and Georgia, and that's why eventually they're going to switch to a Southern strategy, and Cornwallis is going to go down there with an army, and that's where they're going to try to win the war, by raising up that loyalist militia.
Anne Morgan, better known as Nancy, was born in or around 1735 in North Carolina or Pennsylvania. Okay, Nancy has become as much a folk legend as she is a historical figure, but for this video I'm going to use the most credible information available, unless it gets in the way of a good fart joke. And we do know that she was a real person, if only because of the really famous people she's related to. Nancy was first cousins with Daniel Boone and was aunt-in-law to Henry Clay. Oh, there you are, you handsome devil. Are you always gonna look this good? Oh my God, someone unwrapped a mummy. Now, Nancy wasn't built like other women. She had fiery red hair, arms like tree trunks, and her eyes were, yeah, there you go.
Really close to her nose.
Nancy also stood a towering 6 feet tall.
Really?
That is definitely not average height for the time.
Napoleon makes an appearance with the average height for the time joke. Awesome. Love it.
She was a tough woman, evident by the 8 children she bore. Heck, I didn't even feel the last one. And by the fact that she reportedly dominated her husband, Benjamin Hart. Which is totally unfounded. I was a brave and manly volunteer in the local militia and the undisputed head of this household. Shut up, Benjamin. Yes, mother. Nancy could come off as super intimidating,
I bet.
But she did have a
6-foot woman with guns for arms at this time in history, I'd be intimidated.
Side, even if her favorite old turkey was the one most likely to see it. Aw, they look so happy there together. I sure hope nothing happens to change that.
The turkey?
What? I'm just saying.
You better be just saying.
There are quite a few stories about just how tough Nancy was. In one, Nancy and her kids were boiling some soap when they noticed something strange.
Mama, this wall's gone and grown an eyeball.
Is that so? Well, gather round, young'uns. Mama's gonna teach you how to deal with a peeper. See, I could splash this soap into that hole, but I'm just as likely to get burnt by the ricochet. But by dumping this entire pot on the ogre's head, his whole face melts and slides off like chicken skin, and I'm no worse for wear.
In another story, the British took the city of Augusta in 1779 as part of their southern strategy. Patriot Lieutenant Colonel Elijah Clark asked his men to sneak into the city as spies, but his men were less than eager to volunteer. Not one of you has the courage to accept this mission?
And here's the thing, the revolution is so much of what makes the American Revolution story interesting is the espionage that goes on both sides. And you even had a role on the frontier, these guys that were known as Indian spies, and a few of my ancestors were among them. There were a lot of them, but basically they were out on the frontier to kind of keep an eye on things and make sure that none of the Native American tribes that were allied with the British came raiding into these frontier towns. And so spies and information and disinformation and intelligence gathering, all super important.
Oh, hell, I'll do it. Can't believe I'm the only one here not acting like a Nancy, and that's my friggin' name.
Disguised as a man, Nancy slipped
That's
into
awesome.
the enemy-held city, gathering all the information
Make
she
America
could.
British
So with
again.
our reserves here at Musgrove Mill and more in Carolina, we should be quite secure. Wait a minute, who are you?
Me? Just a loyal Georgian.
Oh yeah? Well, how we know you're not one of those rebels? How we know you're one of us?
You see that ludicrous display last night?
What was Winger thinking, sending Walcott on that early?
Thing about Arsenal is, they always try to walk it in.
Okay, you're good. But who's your friend?
That's King George III, of course.
Other stories told about Nancy include the time she led an all-woman defense of a fort against a combined British and Indian opposition. Nancy, come on! Do you really think you and your ladies can stop us? Or
That giant cannon reminds me of the Mons Meg, which is this giant cannon at Edinburgh Castle in Scotland.
later in life when she broke her son-in-law out of prison for decapitating a man, and nobody was brave enough to stop her.
You got a problem? Do something. Yeah, that's what I thought.
But the most famous
the hand with
story
him.
is when 5 Tory soldiers made the mistake of coming to her front door. See, these Tories were king-loving colonists that fought for the British.
So yeah, Tories, that's it was used as a derogatory name toward loyalist Americans by the Patriots. So you had Patriots and Tories because Tories were the party of Parliament that was leading the prosecution of the war. So if you were siding with the monarchy, you were siding with the government of Lord North, who were the Tories.
And Nancy hated Tories. She had more Tory hate than people watching Saved by the Bell. Tori Scott, played by Leanna Creel, was a character introduced in the 4th and final season of Saved by the Bell, to somehow replace the effervescent Tiffany Amber Thiessen after her contract was up, and Elizabeth Berkley, who apparently left the show to become a stripper. The Tory episodes were scattered haphazardly.
I was definitely not expecting a Showgirls reference in this video. All right, he's showing his age a little bit, and by his age, I mean my age, because obviously we grew up with Saved by the Bell.
Throughout the final season, creating a confusing mess and marring the send-off to the greatest kids live-action television show ever. You heard me, Disney Channel punks. Come at me. Quentin Reviews can make a 12-hour review of my ass. This has been Explaining the Joke. Now back to the video. Sometime around
That
1780,
was great.
5 Tory soldiers out of Augusta made the absolute idiot decision to pay a visit to Nancy. All out, Nancy, come out and show yourself.
What are you lot supposed to be?
What's it look like?
Well, you look like a hot dog, they look like used sanitary pads, and that one, well, he kind of looks like Conan O'Brien.
Bugger
does.
me, he kinda does.
Who has a degree in history from like Harvard or Yale, I think. Yeah, I had to look it up to be sure. He graduated magna cum laude with a degree in history and literature from Harvard. Yeah, he's not just a comedian, it's a smart dude. And he interned for a couple of congressmen. Pretty crazy.
We're Tory soldiers fighting in the name of the crown, and we're here because there's word that a rebel Whig came this way.
He did, and wouldn't you know it, you just missed him. Went right on down the road not 10 minutes before you turds arrived.
Hurry, men, we can catch him. Oh, thank you, Nancy. But aren't you afraid they'll be right back?
Oh, I wouldn't worry. I got a little something waiting for them.
Sir, here.
Yes. Oh, let's see.
Are you looking for that wig?
For that wig?
He's a dastardly fellow, and it's a good thing that we have brave British colonists like yourselves out on the prowl. I think typically the Patriots called themselves Patriots. I don't know if they were called Whigs by the Tories or not, but they're rebellious spies all around. They're just looking down the crown in the mighty British Empire. Imagine that. Subjects without a king. Madness, I say. Anyway, if you made it this far, it means you've paused the video. If you're that dedicated, let me say sorry for the lack of uploads this year. It's been a bit rough, but I'm hoping to turn it around. Life happens. It does, absolutely, and I hope things get better, for sure.
He's a dastardly fellow, and it's a good thing that we have brave British colonists like yourself out on the prowl. If you want to find him, you'll have to read closely and carefully, because they're a... By dusk, the Whig had escaped,
nice.
And the Tories had realized they'd been duped, and they angrily returned. Nancy, you're lucky we're men of honor and chivalry. We would be well within our rights to burn your home to the ground. And worse, instead, for your dastardly conduct, you will make us dinner.
Oh no, my punishment is the reinforcement of stereotypes. Whatever shall I
turkey.
do? Look around, morons. Your Tory friends have already robbed me of everything I have to eat.
Not everything. And then the soldiers made the worst mistake of their lives. Turkey's on the menu tonight, boys.
A little Lord of the Rings reference.
Nancy, what's a man gotta do to get some water around here?
I'll have to send Suki to fetch more from the spring. In the meantime, why don't you have some more of this moonshine?
Hope it doesn't make me blind. At least we wouldn't have to see her face anymore.
Suki, be a darling for Mama and go get some water. Are you sure, Mama? I don't want you to be alone with those men. It's fine, child. Mama's not alone.
Suki ran to the spring to fetch water and to blow the secret conch to alert others of the trouble brewing.
Oh, where's that conch? Where is it?
Oh, here.
Wait, really?
Kill the pig, cut her throat, spill her blood.
Oh, wrong conch.
Suki, what's wrong? A bunch of Tory soldiers are in the house with Mama.
Okay, I'll gather up some men so we can get the drop on them.
Father, they killed Turkey.
Oh, God, they're already dead. Suki returned to the house to find... How's that turkey cooking, Nancy?
He's cooking fine. In the meantime, you boys just drink up.
If we have much more of this, we're
Because
all gonna...
nothing bad has ever happened from a group of soldiers all getting drunk, right?
have eyes like Nancy. Once she had gotten the Tories nice and liquored up, Nancy turned to part 2 of her plan. Stealthily, she would pass the soldiers' muskets out of the house until... Hey! Where's the privy? I have to take a tinkle.
This is out back.
Nancy got back to her plan, but on the 3rd gun, the soldiers got wise. Nancy!
You hold it right there!
What are you gonna do, you old crone? You haven't got the medal. Now, in the name of the crown, I order you to...
I'll do the same to the next one of you that does anything stupid.
Hope you don't mind, but I fixed the toilet paper while I was in there. Put it under, which is the king's way.
That's appropriate. And of course, his icon on his t-shirt at the beginning of the video was the toilet paper going over, which is the only appropriate way to do that, by the way. And I will die on that hill.
Now surrender your damn Tory caucuses to this Whig woman.
Lads, that's the last gun. She can't get us all. But which one of us is she aiming at? I can't bloody tell. I know. It's like them eyes are trying to meet in the middle. Holy
You might get me in a rush, but not before I turn your head into a canoe. That's one of the best lines in the movie Tombstone.
crap, Nancy. Did you do this all yourself?
With a little help.
Well, boys, let's take them to Clock Station and hold them there.
They ain't going nowhere. Well, we can't keep them prisoners here. I ain't never
No prisoners.
intended to keep them as prisoners. You mean firing squad? Shooting's too good for them.
And it's said that on that night, the remaining Tories were hanged in the backyard.
And this was a really common thing that happened to both Tories, but occasionally also patriots. I've mentioned it before, and I know I've already mentioned my ancestors a lot in this one, but sometimes this is how I know these stories firsthand, because you're not going to read the stories of the hangings in a typical history that kind of gives you the highlights of the Revolutionary War in the South, because these weren't high-ranking people being executed. These were often privates and captains. In my case, my 5th grade grandfather was a captain, hanged at a place called Tory Oak, and I have a piece of the tree he was hanged on in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. And it happened on both sides. It was a civil war. It was ugly. It was brutal. And while nothing like what happened in the Patriot, where an entire town is locked in a church and burned alive, ever happened, things did happen that were really ugly.
Bodies swayed in the moonlight, old Nancy whistled a familiar rebel tune.
Yankee Doodle. Yeah, Yankee Doodle was used by the British as kind of a derogatory song about the Americans, but the Americans proudly owned it. And in fact, they when the British are surrendering at Yorktown, and some accounts say that their band was playing a song called "The World Turned Upside Down," though we don't know for sure if that was the case. The Americans very famously start playing Yankee Doodle, almost as a way of mocking them. Yeah, you're surrendering to Yankee Doodle.
Hey, Turkey.
That was a pretty cool story. No guest voices this time. Tell me who I should collab with in the comments. That's awesome. Very cool. So, yeah, that was great. I enjoyed that video. That is a story that I was not at all familiar with. So I've learned something new. Now I want to go and learn a little more about her and see what we didn't hear and how much of that is really factual or is just kind of lore, like a lot of things are in history. Who knows? But I want to thank Pavel in the Czech Republic and Kristianice. I hope I'm pronouncing the name of your town right. I'm looking forward to being in the Czech Republic for the first time in just a couple of months. And then we have another Powell in County Donegal in Ireland as well. So thank you both for your support on Patreon. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.